Welcome, welcome. Exactly, we're buffering. We're getting ready. Hi, John. Hi, Zunicki. Hi, Vera. Hello, Christina? Is it just... I feel like the extra letters are throwing me off. Is it literally just Christina? Hello, Candlemaker. Hello, username. Hello, Jonathan. Hello, Spry. Hello, Lydia. Welcome, Scotty. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope everyone is having a wonderful Friday. How are you guys doing? What is going on? I have some rants and some rambles and some information about upcoming videos that I thought we could chat about some of the things I've talked about this week so far on the channel. There's a video coming out tomorrow, by the way, if you're wondering. The second video of the week is going to be on Saturday. I'm not going anywhere, but I am wearing this cute dress, so I wanted to show you guys. I thought this was a cute look. I don't know. This is like the kind of thing I really like, which is like mesh top plus dress is just like that's my thing. That's my deal. Howdy from Ontario, Canada. Well, welcome, Canada. I've never been to Ontario. I've wanted to do maybe a like Toronto, Montreal trip is what I've thought of doing in the past, but I don't know when that's gonna happen at this point. But I like to go. I've been to Vancouver and I've been to Victoria, and like kind of around that general part of BC. But I have never been to the East Coast. Well, no, that's not true. I've been to the Canadian side of the Niagara Falls. But how old was I when I went there? I think I was in high school, but I don't remember how old I was. I went to Niagara Falls at one point, but it was a while ago. Hello from Puerto Rico. Hello. It is 6 o'clock where I am at. Good evening from Boise. Well, hello, Boise. I've heard that you have a good kink scene in Boise. Is that true? I met a couple people at, I think it was a Dark Odyssey convention. And then again at Kink Fest, I met the same people again that were from Boise. You never know. I mean, it is true. The Canadian side of the Niagara Falls is way better. There's a reason why we went there. The American side of the Niagara Falls is literally just like a shitty park. And then like Canada like has built up like the city around Niagara Falls to be an experience. And apparently it's still a popular honeymoon destination, which I don't know, is it symbolism? Is that why? Are people like, is it like, you guys remember, have you ever watched the very beginning of Mad Men? Where the guy is, I think it's Pete, is joking about taking a honeymoon trip to Niagara Falls, and it's like, that's not the only thing that was wet. Like, right? Somebody sent that to Ben Shapiro. Okay. Listen, we love the Canadians here. You're all very welcome. I don't know if FetLife is rather dead here, as is the kink scene. I mean, FetLife is kind of dead everywhere is the answer. Like, it still exists, and it's not at, Collar Me, I think, would be one of them. It's not at that level of dead, but it's not nearly as active as it used to be, and I think things like Discord chats and I don't know where the people are at, but it's definitely not the same as it used to be. I think people have just changed how they are interacting with social media. Good morning from Korea. Whoa. Good morning, Korea. We usually get a couple people I notice that are from like Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Korea. Like, we're a very international audience, and we love that. The beautiful Pacific Northwest, where I'm also, well, I'm not from here originally. I was not born here. But I have been living here for long enough to where I feel like I can say I'm from here. In any case, welcome everyone. We are doing another interactive Q&A, as we usually like to do on Fridays. Just some quick things before we get into the actual Q&A part of the stream. Remember, this is an 18+ only stream, so if you are here and you are 16, 17, younger than that, heaven forbid, please do not be here. This is for adults, because when we're talking about things like polyamory and kink and things like that, this isn't really a space for minors to be interacting with adults. That is for your safety, my safety, everyone's safety. That is really, I think, the best way to go. Also, we do have some rules and an FAQ down below. So we have been doing Q&As for 3 years at this point on Fridays. We've been doing it pretty consistently for a while, and because of that, we do have some frequently asked questions that we do have answers for. So if you want to know about things like where do I buy a vlogger, how do I tell my boyfriend I want to try BDSM, those sorts of things, those are down below. You can check those out. Also, just some quick rules here. I would say the big things is we don't give medical advice or mental health advice. So if somebody's asking, like, hey, I think this might be infected, like, that is not something to answer over a live stream. I'm going to tell you to seek medical professionals. That's just my policy. If it's not in my wheelhouse, I try not to go into that area. And let's see, any other big things? I mean, don't dox each other. Be nice. Don't spam things. And I do answer questions in the order that they are received. So it is really beneficial if you have a question to ask it sooner, so I have more time to get to it and explore it. I do have some topics that I wanted to talk about just to kind of get us started. But anything related to polyamory, BDSM, asexuality, being kinky, fetishes, whatever, all of that is fair game. If you want to ask questions about that, we don't stick generally very strictly to the theme because that's boring and I like talking about lots of things. So those are sort of the ground rules for engagement in the live stream. Anything else comes up, let me know. Oh, also, if you want to make sure I do answer your question, because if you do have a question that is answered by the FAQ, I won't answer it unless, and in general, if you do a super chat either through YouTube or by going to the Streamlabs link down below, I do answer those questions right away. And especially as we get towards the end of the live stream, when I have I'm an hour behind in the chat and I'm trying to catch up, that's really what that's for. And if you do a super chat, you're awesome and amazing, and you contribute to this goal up here, which is for replacing my 8-year-old YouTube camera. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for the stream advice and service. Of course, I love being here on Friday nights. I literally don't have anything else to do, so I am glad I get to spend it with you guys. Earlier today, before I started streaming, I ran up against the wire for being done for this. Oh, I have it in a different thing. That's where I have it. I have been doing research. It's one of those things where I came across this and I was like, I need an answer for this because now it's going to bother me if I don't have an answer. So 2 things happened. One is the Try Guys, they're still around apparently. The Try Guys on YouTube did a video where they did extreme sex questions that involved being spanked. And actually the video itself I didn't really have a problem with. All the guys, Eugene, Keith, I can never remember the other guy's name, they're nice, and they had Mistress Justine Cross on there, who did a really good job, I think, of demonstrating consent for vanilla people every single time before she spanked them or did anything as a punishment, right? She said, do I have your consent? Is this okay with you? Is this too hard? She was very proactive with all that, which I really appreciated. But I want to say either the first or second question was, how many people have tried BDSM? Just out of nowhere, okay, right now, live. We're going to do this live. If you had to guess, what percentage of Americans, let's just say that, right, to keep it in line with although, was the survey? Actually, the survey they based it on, I found, was actually Australian, so never mind. How many people, how many sexually active adults do you think have tried BDSM as a percentage of the population? 18 to 75. Doesn't matter. What percentage do you think it is? Because whatever you're guessing, I'm guaranteeing it'll not be the answer they gave in that. And the second part of me wanting to find this information was I read an article by Race Bannon, who you all maybe have heard me talk about before. I did a video on one of the other articles he's done in the past. I did one that was about masculinity and submission, and one that was about Dom disillusionment syndrome. And Race is a really, really good popular thinker in the BDSM world. He is largely responsible for spearheading the movement towards getting a separation in the DSM between clinical sadism and masochism and consensual sadism and masochism. So literally, he is the person we have to thank for basically making it so clinicians don't believe that everyone that does BDSM has a paraphilia. So that's good and awesome and fun. And he's on Twitter. Like, I just love that. He's definitely on the senior side of things, but I love that he's on social media. Anyways, he did a article recently where he was talking about the idea is everyone a little bit kinky? And so that got the wheels turning for me. And like, I need to know what the actual data for this is. Okay. Now that I've explained that, I'm going to read what you all think is the answer to this. So you can be as mad as I would. Unless you were watching that live stream on Patreon where I went over this. Because if you think it's cheating, and I'll know it's you. We have 80%, 90%, 85%, 88%. Okay, no one's gotten it right so far. 30%, 20%. We're getting a little warmer. 65%, 70%. Okay, Casey is saying less than 10. Tried about 85%, 25%, 15, 78, 25, 12. No one's somewhere between 0 and 100. Correct. You got it. 50%. No. Okay. So based on the study that they were using for that, they didn't, of course, provide any of the studies with any of this information. 69%. Somebody gave the real answer. No. So they didn't actually tell which study that came from, because I was surprised at the answer and I was like, this can't be right. I have to research this. So the answer they gave was 2%. 2% of people have tried BDSM, or at least let me refresh my memory on that video to make sure I'm actually like remembering their phrasing correctly. So I don't want to be misquoting anyone around here. Maybe try, guys. Just give me a second here. Oh, this is the exact question. Okay. Approximately what % of sexually active people said they have been involved with BDSM? It was the word involved that threw me, because there is a difference between fantasizing about BDSM, trying BDSM once, doing it regularly, and feeling like you are involved in doing BDSM. And that's why survey language is like one of the most important parts of doing a survey, especially when you are dealing with trying to find answers to these really fine-grained questions. So they said that I think it was 1.6% of women and 2.2% of men said they had been involved with BDSM in the past year. And they did define BDSM. They did define it as bondage, dominance, discipline, sadism, masochism, whatever, right? The whole acronym. They did actually like spell out what they meant by that. And that is very interesting, because when you look at other studies, the numbers are very different. Like you look at certain studies which indicate up to, I think, 96% of people have ever had a BDSM fantasy before, ever. Somewhere between, depending on the activity, somewhere between 40 to 50% of people have an active fantasy related to BDSM, i.e. they have at least a mild interest in some kind of fantasy that involves an element of BDSM, be it tying someone up or being dominated or spanking, some degree of that. And then other studies which do not actually say the word BDSM. I think that's really key. They describe what the action is instead. So they ask people, have you ever tried spanking? Have you ever tried using a blindfold or bondage, right? When they actually ask particular activities, instead of saying, have you done BDSM, the big scary thing that dominatrixes in latex do, right? The numbers are very different. So when you're asking that question, you have fantasies that people have, which is actually very interesting, because I'm going to have a whole video about this, so I don't want to spoil everything right here. But some of the not the most common fantasies, but BDSM fantasies were at least mildly interesting to some extent for like 40 to 50% of people, even if it wasn't a core erotic fantasy for them. And then when you look at people who've actually tried something, between 20 and 30% have actually tried it at some point in time ever. Not regularly doing it, but at some point ever. And then when you look at the number of people that have been to BDSM dungeons or have an interest in that, you have about 4% of people that have ever been to a BDSM dungeon. And then when you break it down further into have you done that over the past year in a different study, then you have about 1% of people who said they've ever been to a BDSM dungeon. And depending on the activity, between 4 and 14% of people have done some kind of BDSM related activity in the past year. With, I think, the highest percentage being for spanking at like 14%, and then 4.5% doing, I think, bondage. Anyways, I have other studies to look at, other sort of information to synthesize about this, but that is fascinating to me that you can have one study that, based on the wording alone, gives a completely different answer to another study that's trying to answer the same question. Because depending on which thing you're looking at and how you ask about it, you're going to get completely different responses. And I think that really speaks to the bias that people have about BDSM and this idea that people that would consider themselves to be vanilla have towards kink stuff, which is like, you ask them, and this, the first study, the one that said 2% of people participated in BDSM at some point, like in the past year, were involved in it. That 2% number was from a 2002 study, and then the higher numbers came from, I think, a 2005 study, and then another one that's more recent. So both before and after 50 Shades of Grey, the numbers are actually fairly consistent. They're not like, it's not like 50 Shades of Grey like suddenly made 10% of all Americans kinky. Like, that would be pretty crazy. But it's fascinating. It's fascinating stuff to look at these numbers and look at this research because, again, like I was trying to say, people that would consider themselves to be vanilla have this kind of potential bias maybe against BDSM because they have preconceptions about what they think it means to do BDSM. They think, oh, that's like dominatrixes and latex. That's like this crazy dungeon porn. That's men in gimp suits, the thing that will eternally curse me forever. The fucking men in gimp suits example. Don't know why that's always a thing, right? That's what people think of when they think of BDSM, and they don't necessarily consider their playful one-time spanking or birthday bondage or whatever they do once a year as being a BDSM activity because those things in their brain are very separate, which I think is sort of fascinating to look at those numbers. Although, one of the studies I looked at, I think it was from, it was like a 2008, I think, study from Adam and Eve. They had said that, I think it was right in the middle of the other numbers, like 27% of people had tried bondage. And then, get this, for people that do BDSM activities, people that have tried bondage, only 18% of them had used a safe word. What? No, incorrect. Use safe words, you little BDSM babies. You're gonna hurt yourselves. It's, you know. Anyways, I'm still in the middle of researching it. Like, literally, I was like, oh, do I want to live stream today? I kind of want to keep researching this. There was a question on Twitter that was going around earlier this week about, like, oh, if you could do anything for a job and money was no object, what would you do? And I'm like, 50% going into academia again, 50% opening my own skincare company, and becoming a master esthetician. So, you know, really, really depends on what ends up happening. I'm not really inclined to get into academia again until, like, honestly, I gotta figure out what's gonna be going on with, like, master's degrees and student loans and stuff like that, because I'm still paying off my undergraduate student loans, and I'd like to have those wrapped up before I take on more debt. Unless I could go, maybe I could go abroad to get a degree. There's a lot of these studies that come out of Australia, and the Netherlands has a lot of, like, sex-based research as well. So maybe I'll end up in the Netherlands. You never know. Netherlands has a kink scene. I've seen it. Oh, it was the answer for the survey question was they had used a safe word. Not that they knew what it was, but that they had used it. Which is kind of frightening when you're like, oh, so 27% of you have tried bondage. But of the 27% that have tried it, less than 20% of you used a safe word while you were doing it. Like, oh, by the way, I decided I'm going to get double lobe piercings. What do you guys think? I think I'm going to get, I've already kind of designed what I want to have done. And I've decided I want to get like a little, like a crescent moon, and then like a black, I had, that's the same, like basically I have my, this is kind of teammate, my VCHs has the same thing in it. I think it's from Anatometal. Metal. Getting like a black jewel stud. I feel like that would look cool. That's what I've decided on. A master's degree is perfect for a BDSM educator. I'm sure somebody's made that pun. The difficulty is deciding. I've heard different things from different people. So some people say to get both on one ear at the same time so you can sleep on the other one. But I'm not getting a cartilage piercing. And I definitely like had pierced ears before. And I don't remember sleeping on them when they were healing to be a problem at all. Even though they were like shitty Claire's piercings. So I feel like if I get one done on each side and then I get the second ones done on each side like a couple weeks later, that's kind of what my plan is. But I need to like call and like get a consultation with this piercer and like talk to them about it directly. I just like wanted the internet's opinion because that's always a good idea. So we have a question / a comment from John Bozo. Have you ever done any ball kicking? Can you kick a guy in the balls while wearing a shoe or boots with heels? So I've never done personally any ball busting or ball kicking. Like generally when I top, I don't want anything to do with anyone's genitals. Like, listen, if your humiliation you want for your penis is to have your penis ignored, like that's me. Like, if you want your penis to not even be involved in the scenario, that's what I'm here for. So, I have done trampling before. I have done like walking on people and like kicking people and stuff in boots before, but not on their genitals. And I think you could do it with shoes, I imagine. But I haven't tried it though, and it would probably depend on the person and how hard they were kicking you and all that other stuff. But not something I have personal experience with, but sort of related to it, I guess you could say. Animal bite earrings? I don't know what those are. What are animal bite earrings? Oh my god, those are so cute! Wow. They have one that looks like doggo. That's perfect. I love it. Dinosaur. I want you guys to know that I am... Sorry, I went like dog mode there for a second. So I want you all to know that I am the kind of person that when I play a video game or watch a movie, I point out all of the animals. When I'm in a car, I point out all the animals. I'm like, oh my god, look, cows. Oh my god, look, a bird. Like, I have to let everyone, that's my doggo mode. I have to let everyone know about all the animals because that is what I'm here for, okay? And if somebody doesn't recognize the animals, like, who's gonna recognize the animals, okay? It's gotta be me. That's my opinion. How common is aftercare for tops? My partner is very enthusiastic about our scenes together, but he deals with a lot of top drop. I've started touching his hair after and other things, and he says it's super helpful to feel less of the occasional guilt that pops up. Okay, great question. Give me 1 second. I need to turn off my wall heater. What is that? Oh, yeah, exactly. It is like squirrel. It is very much that sort of a deal. Only it's like, oh my god, look at that. As opposed to like bark, 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 angry, you know? Different thing. I'm gonna move this closer to me. I don't know if that made a difference, but maybe it will. So, okay, to the question of... Is aftercare common for tops? So I wouldn't say that it's like a common practice that people do by default. I wouldn't say that like most people think of aftercare for tops as like a necessary thing unless it's negotiated for. However, I do think that aftercare for tops should be more of a thing, and I do think that it is important. And the reason why I think that is because of exactly what you were just describing. With submissives and with bottoms, usually the sort of drop you experience, especially if you're doing like impact play or bondage, the drop is very like physical. You're like physically drained after a scene. You're probably mentally drained, especially if you were doing like a lot of power exchange or humiliation or what have you. But if you're doing something physical, like it's like you have to physically ward off the negative stuff of like punishing your body for a couple hours, more or less. And so people don't always consider that the tops are also going along on an intense journey when they're doing BDSM with someone else, because a lot of us do have to deal with that guilt and shame around hurting other people or mistreating our partners, or that's not how a good man acts towards a woman. Like, there's lots of that you have to work through. And so I absolutely think that tops can ask for and should be asking for aftercare. I think what you're doing in terms of like touching his hair after a scene, I think that's a really good thing to do. If you've ever taken this survey that's called like the love language survey, it's really easy. You can just literally Google love language, it'll pop up. That can be a good way of figuring out how your partner wants to receive love and what makes them feel cared for. That could be things like physical touch, like getting their hair touched. That could be things like just spending time together close on the couch, not doing anything physical. That could be watching a movie together. That could be you getting them a glass of water. Like, there's tons of ideas you can go with for what they need, and you might have to experiment a little bit, which is normal. And that's going to be how you find what really works, and what you're also available for is the bottom based on your own energy needs as well. But it's totally legitimate that they would need some reassurance. I think maybe some verbal reassurance alongside maybe some head patting or getting them some water, I think would be really good. Just reassuring them that you had a good time, you liked what happened, that they're not a bad person, that you still care about them, that you don't think they're a monster. Like, whatever it is that they are kind of fighting internally, try to proactively fight against that with some positive affirmations, and I think that'll really help. And yeah, if it's physical touch, I think hair touching is great. You give them a foot massage, especially if you're really into service. I don't know if you are or not, but that can actually be like a reward for you, as well as like you get to provide this service for your partner. I have partners that really like having their head scratched or having their hair brushed as well, like an actual physical brush, not just like going through with your fingers. That could be really nice too. Or a back massage, or like, I don't know if like some people do have sex as part of their aftercare, but that can be almost like, especially if your partner is a dude and then they have to like perform sexually, it can actually be kind of a negative sometimes. But like, sex can also be part of aftercare as well. So there's that. All right, let's get to the questions. Thank you all so much for what you've said so far. This is great, but I want to make sure I'm answering questions in order. So let me get to doing that. All right. Ooh, tomorrow I'm seeing my mommy for the first time in about a month, and I'm so excited. That's so great, Spencer. It's really nice when you get to reconnect after that long. Is it normal to be scared when I am collared? Let me think about that. So, if you're being collared, I think you shouldn't be scared of being collared or scared by the person who's collaring you. However, if what you're going through is like, I am collared, but I still experience in some way the sensation of fear, that's normal. Being collared does not make you immune to certain emotions. But if you are scared of the BDSM relationship you are in, collared or not, that is not a great sign. I think that's something that a lot of people kind of ignore in their BDSM relationships. And I think you have to trust that developed gut instinct about when things feel right or not. And if you're feeling really scared and unsure, it's good to tune into that and listen to that and saying like, hey, why am I scared right now? Why am I feeling afraid? Where is this coming from? And if it's because of something your partner has done, maybe they don't respect your safe words, maybe they transgress your boundaries or your limits in some fashion, that is something to pay attention to, and I don't think that's a healthy relationship to be in. But if what you're scared of is like, oh, I'm not scared of living up to my partner's expectations, I'm scared of not being a good enough slave or whatever, like, those are fears that you can address and talk through with a partner about. But if your partner has done something that has made you feel afraid, like, you can't just ignore that, There are other fish in the sea that will not do that. Or maybe you're just not I think this is important to consider as well. Just because you want to do BDSM doesn't mean that you are in a mental state where you're ready to engage in BDSM, because it can be really scary. And if you're dealing with maybe certain trauma you haven't addressed yet, or you have like mental health issues with really severe anxiety that aren't under control, you're not seeing a therapist, right? You're not really getting any help with dealing with that. That's going to make it much harder to have a healthy relationship with BDSM where you're not like transposing your fear and anxiety and issues from one area into another area. Does that make sense? Like, you don't have to be a perfect, like, mentally well person to do BDSM. And in fact, people that do BDSM, according to multiple studies at this point, are no more mentally ill, no more likely to be mentally ill than the rest of the population. But there is more awareness around it, and you have to have that awareness because it affects how you can engage in BDSM and how to navigate in it safely and kind of be aware of what you're doing. But if you are dealing with some other things, maybe you're not ready to do BDSM, I don't know anything about you, that's just my 2 cents of advice. Ooh, this is exactly kind of along the lines of something I wanted to bring up. So Christina says, no luck on dating in the kink scene. Am I too picky to want doms to do classes before impact play or bondage if they only tried it a few times with past girlfriends is the experience they have? Fuck, Christina, I am with you. My gal, my NB, my whatever, I don't know what your gender identity is, but I am with you on that 100%. I feel you. This is a struggle that I have been going through. Generally speaking, as far as when I am on dating apps, I am on OkCupid. I have downloaded but have not started to use Feeld, which is Feeld. And when I do use it, I will give you all my review of it, which is supposed to be for like kinky and polyamorous people. But a lot of the doms that I meet and have interacted with, their level of experience is like all the surveys I'm reading are like, oh yeah, you know, I had this one girlfriend a couple years ago and she really wanted to try some kinky stuff. And so, you know, I spanked her on her birthday. I tied her up a couple times, but at no point was any education engaged with. And that terrifies me. And actually, one of the studies that I was looking at, I think it said that like 3% of people had ever attended a class or gone to a seminar that involved education around sex and BDSM. So that's concerning considering the number of people that have tried things before, because those numbers do not match up. That makes it about 10% of people that have ever tried a BDSM related activity have actually been educated for it in like a class setting. I don't think that you are being too picky by having expectations for education. I think there's a difference between previous education only being a certain way, but being willing to do more than that. Or if they're just saying, no, I don't need that, it's just fine, whatever. Because unless they have a really good fucking reason for it, which, you know, I guess if you're in a certain part of the world, like, things might be harder to access. But there's the Kink Academy, there's tutorials on YouTube, there's all kinds of websites and blogs and FetLife articles and online classes that you can take that you can find on places like FetLife. There's Munches where you can ask other people questions. Like, there's more than any other point in history, there is so much accessible education for learning how to do things like impact play or bondage. And especially bondage, I cannot fucking imagine just being like, yeah, I'm gonna completely wing this. I can do it. I can tie my shoes. Like, what? No, slow down. Slow your roll. I think if what you need is a partner that is willing to be educated so that way you feel safe and you can be assured of their knowledge, I think that is totally reasonable. It is going to narrow your dating pool, but if you can find someone that, even if they don't have the education yet, but is willing to do it, I think that's a big step. And for me, part of the reason why it's important for me to have partners that are willing to do the fucking education themselves is because, one, my day job is educating people, and I really don't want to bring that into the bedroom because it completely, like, messes with my vibe, because then I feel like I'm in teacher mode and not in, like, intimate partner mode. And then two, like, it's kind of egotistical. Like, it's like, oh, well, I know this is about your safety technically, but, like, I can kind of figure it out on my own. Or, like, I don't know, being intimidated, they have to ask other people how to do things. Like, it's such, like, I don't want to bring this up because I feel like it's going to, I don't know, make all the bad parts of the internet come out. But, like, it is kind of a toxic masculinity thing oftentimes. They're like, oh, I can't learn from anyone else. I don't want to learn from anyone else. And it's like, you do not get your man card removed because you read a book on how to be a better dominant. Like, that's not, like, how that works. Like, I don't get it. Men will ask other men advice on, like, how do I get girls to talk to me, but then when it comes down to, like, how do I flog a girl, they don't ask anybody else advice. Absolutely fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff. Come on. Come on. Where'd my chat go? All right, so I will leave that there for the minute because I should move on to another question. But I will say again, I am testing out some additional new dating apps. I kind of have ran out of people on OkCupid, I think, at this point. I'm not really planning on going on any in-person dates. Thank you, Omicron variant. But I would like to go at some point and maybe, like, there are ways you can do personal ads on FetLife, but they kind of suck because most of the people that post personal ads on FetLife, especially now, are like people looking for gangbangs, orgies, breeding fetishes, what else? Sissification stuff, and like pro-doms. And like those are the people that post personal ads, which is all like, hey, if that's your thing, that's your thing. But it's not what I'm looking for. So I'm looking in the wrong place. I mentioned last week that the munch in my local community was canceled. It was because of snow. It's going to snow again on Sunday. Oh no! I mean, it can't help the weather, I guess. Do they have like, I think I mentioned this last week as well, but like, can they set up a virtual munch? Can you guys do like a Zoom call or something? I feel like not being able to see each other for weeks is like, come on, we have the technology now. Everyone knows what Zoom is. Or Discord or something, right? I feel like there should be a way to still see people, because especially when you're snowed in on a weekend, like what else are you gonna do, right? Why not hang out with some people you know? Oh yeah, you were there for the live stream, weren't you? We do live in a bubble, it's true. I want to see the phrasing for the question. You can get very different results. Yeah, involved is more kinky community than tried. Yeah, exactly. So I actually have the study pulled up, and I was looking through it, and they don't provide a copy of the questionnaire in the paper, but let me see where's the methodology. Oh, this is the wrong study. Sorry. This is what I have too many things open at once, which is not unusual for me. So many tabs open when I research. ResearchGate is literally a lifesaver, though. This is definitely a scan of a printed copy, though, by the way. They don't have the actual phrasing, but let me see. Aims, methods. Oh, here we go. So this was a phone interview. So this is like, it's like basically they randomly generate phone numbers and they call phone numbers and talk to people. So it's considered like a better standard for the randomness of a survey compared to like a self-selecting internet-based survey. And what they said is, late in the interview, respondents were asked about their involvement in various autoerotic and less common sexual practices in the previous 12 months. This set of questions included a skip-out mechanism so that respondents who displayed any discomfort with the topics were immediately moved on to the next section. How many people just like paused for a minute and then they skipped over a question, I wonder? Skipped out respondents were excluded from analysis of BDSM. People who said yes to the question about B&D or S&M, explained as bondage and discipline, sadomasochism, and dominance and submission, are described below as potential BDSM participants. An alternative procedure of allocating skipped out respondents to the no category led to very small decreases in our estimates of the prevalence of BDSM, but there were no changes to the patterns of associations or the strength of associations observed between different factors. Full details of the process are available on request. So they did explain bondage and discipline, but what does discipline mean? People in the kink community don't even know what discipline means. How's a vanilla person going to be like, yeah, when I tell my boyfriend to spank me, that's discipline? You know, like I think that is interesting methodology. Yeah, but they specifically used like, have you been involved with B&D or S&M in the past 12 months is like the question they asked. So, I wonder why Australia was chosen as the pool. Well, it's like the same reason that any other population is chosen. It's because this was done. Was this the University of New South Wales? I'm sorry, I don't know Australian universities. UNSW, University of New South Wales, I guess. University of New South Wales, Sydney. It was from a researcher there, and they surveyed almost 20,000 people. It was a really big survey compared to most of the other ones. I've seen ones that were as small as like n equal under 100, like really, really small sample sizes. So this is actually way more representative than a lot of the surveys you get from stuff like this, but yeah, that's why they chose Australia, is because they were based in Australia. And if you were calling people in the US in 2001 for a random BDSM survey at what would be local time, like 2 a.m., like that might not go over super well. But yeah, okay. I looked it up way back when I was getting into it more than just by myself. This was like 10 years ago. It said 70% of women enjoy being spanked or bondage. Yeah, I think I guess you could get that number if you combined the separate totals for bondage and for spanking together. Like they had no overlap between those two categories. You could get 70%, but that's not how survey math works. That's not how survey math works. Did anyone see the Netflix documentary about BDSM? Wait, what? What is that? I know about bonding. Oh, I found this, I was researching this stuff. I found this Korean show that I'd never heard of before, and it's called Switch, and it's from 2018. If somebody can figure out where I can watch this with English subtitles, we will watch it, and I'll review it and everything, okay? So it says, inspired by true events, Switch tells the story of an immigrant woman who begins working as a dominatrix at New York's most exclusive BDSM establishment and quickly gets sucked into a seductive lifestyle filled with luxury, lust, money, deceit, and power, like every good story. In her quest to build her own empire, she will make as many friends and allies as enemies, starting with her ex-husband, who's about to be released from jail and is hungry for revenge. It says it's Korean, but like also the person who, the show creator, I think is Russian. So I don't know. Anyways, it's from 2018. Maybe is it? Yeah. Okay. These people don't sound Korean. It's Stavrula Toska and Eleni Yovas. So I don't know. Those sound pretty Russian to me. Or somewhere thereabouts. Maybe I'm looking. Maybe there's another thing that's that same name, right? What does it say? Who's IMDb's gonna help me out here. IMDb is not helping. Also, Stavrula Toska. Oh, there's a website. It's called Switch the Series. Watch. Where can I watch it? Trying to figure this out now. It says I can log in to watch. Oh, interesting. Okay, I might have to check that out. Anyways, sorry. Ramble aside. Let me... There's just so much I've been researching today. I've got so much information to share. There's a great book everyone should read, How to Lie with Statistics. Tells you how people manipulate stats deliberately or not that makes numbers misleading. Oh yeah. Like, I don't have like I don't have a huge academic background in this, but I am familiar with like confidence intervals and p-hacking, and like that's why I'm not really doing a meta-analysis, but I tried to look at multiple different studies that were in different locations done at different times by different researchers to see if I could come up with some kind of like consistent range. And there's not lots of studies about stuff like this, but you know, if I can find like 3 studies, one's in Belgium, one's in the US, and one's in Australia, 10 years apart from each other, different researchers that don't really know about each other or cite each other, and they're all coming up with like 40% of people, 50% of people have tried this before. Like that feels more consistent to me. But that is why meta-analyses are the gold standard, and we don't have enough research to do a formal meta-analysis of these things yet, but I would love to get to that point someday. Especially when you're dealing with studies that have like 1,000 participants versus like 20,000, right? You gotta figure out how to calibrate those two together. True, but if you look at Germany, for instance, the numbers would be much higher. I don't think that actually. So one of the studies that I looked at is from. I'm gonna get into this stuff because I feel like I'm not gonna bring this up in the video, and so why not? I guess. So one of the studies I looked at, it was like an international study, and it had, I don't even know how many people. It was 317,000 people. That was a lot, and though Germany generally has a lower age, I think, for like when they start sex education, and for like I think average age of sex is like I want to say a year to a year and a half younger than like in other countries. Yeah, so like Germany starts sex ed really young, but when you look at for example, like sexual experiences, the general like lump of BDSM things, so like bondage, blindfolds, spanking, things like that. Sorry, the graph is sideways, so I have to tilt my head to look at this. I know Australia, 32% of people had tried it. US, 36% of people had tried it. And then where is Germany on here? Germany is actually lower. Germany is actually only 20% according to this study. So while German dungeon porn is very popular, does not necessarily mean that German people are on average statistically more likely to have done anything related to BDSM, which I find interesting. I think there's definitely that stereotype, but just because production of something is popular in one area, and actually I kind of curious, what is that compared to like France, for example? Oh, France is almost identical. It's also like 20%. And yeah, then Poland is more religious. So that's not surprising. It would be, well, also you have to remember, like, Germany is a very like Christian country, like comparative to a lot of other places in Europe. Like they don't have a church and state separation like we do in the US, and so like Christian theology education is like part of education in Germany. I think you can opt out of it, but like it's like more standard, I guess. And like it's like I think that sort of, I don't want to say religious conservatism, but like religious values, I imagine, have a somewhat depressing effect on BDSM involvement. My wild speculation, growing up in puritanical America and being raised Catholic, but I think that could potentially both create a desire for BDSM but also reduce participation in it. Would love somebody in Germany doing research on German attitudes about BDSM to tell me if that theory is in any way correct, but it's probably not. What are the stats for Japan? Oh, it's funny actually. Japan had a higher like number of average sexual partners than I was expecting them to. Let's see, where's that number? Japan average number of sexual partners was just over 10. Compared to the US, where it's like 10.5 on average. And then let's see, for Japanese, let's see, experiences. Japan. 19%. What's the highest percent? I want to say it is actually America had the highest percent. Oh, the UK actually. The UK was 37% and the US was 36%. And then Canada at 33%, Australia at 32%. And then the global average is 20%. Netherlands 26, New Zealand 32, South Africa 29, Spain 29. Who is the lowest? Oh, Taiwan and Thailand. Actually, Vietnam 2% was the lowest, and then Taiwan and Thailand were 4 and 6%. So, anyways, interesting study. I could literally look on all of this information for a long time because it is a vast survey. Explained is the name. They have a series about sex, and one episode is centered on BDSM. Oh, really? I hadn't heard that. I'll have to check it out. Let me pull it up. Explained Netflix. Maybe I'll watch that tonight while I'm doing my research. Is it originally on Netflix? Oh, it is. That's fun. Ooh, they have one about monogamy. The one everyone's dying to know about. The female orgasm. The true. Yeah, I remember. Did anyone else grow up in a time when, like, you remember, like, I thought for a long time that only certain women were able to have orgasms. Like, I thought if you were a woman who could have an orgasm, you were like a special exception. Like, you had unlocked something that not every woman could do. And now we're like, yeah, what else would the clitoris be for? It's not, you don't pee out of it. People thought that for a long time. You don't pee out of the clitoris. If you didn't know that, that's the anatomy. Season 2, Cults, strong first episode there. I don't see one that says BDSM. I don't see one unless is it the Cults one? Is it female orgasm? Just one about tattoos. Esports, exactly. Or maybe it's monogamy. I guess it could be the monogamy episode. It has Dan Savage in it, so that wouldn't be surprising, I guess. I've not seen Sex Ed on Netflix. I really don't watch that much TV. I do watch TVs and like I do watch TVs. I watch TV shows and movies when I'm around other people, but like on my own, I tend to just like, I don't know, watch YouTube videos, watch Hassan Piker. You know, that's pretty much what I do. Is I tend to more catch up on YouTube videos than sit down. I have Netflix. I like watching like holiday movies and things, but otherwise and the Great British Bake Off, I always watch that. But outside of that, I'm not really a big TV person. Yes, exactly. Well, to be fair, I was explaining that you don't pee out of the clitoris, which is a misconception that a lot of people have. They are completely separate areas of the body. I've heard good things about Sex Ed. I've talked to, I think Pup Amp told me about it before as well. We brought it up during an interview we did together. But I haven't watched it because I watched Christmas schlock instead. I would like the book How to Lie with Statistics. That is very much up my alley. In the UK, 50 Shades is responsible for a 45% baby boom. That can't be right. Is that seems... I feel like it's more likely that my counter to that is it would be less about 50 Shades of Grey being on the market and more about the waning of austerity measures would be my guess post 2008 recession. I know things about stuff, okay? A lot of places in Europe have free or very cheap university fees. Not sure if that applies to non-citizens. I mean, I think it does in that, like, there is an international tuition, but it is still cheaper than it would be to go to a university in the U.S. Like, especially for what I would want to study, it would be more about finding a university that even allowed the kind of research I'd want to do and, like, have faculty that was doing that kind of research, more so than the particular like prestige of the university or the expense or the size of it or whatever. Like I don't want to go to like a massive university. Like I don't find, like, even if theoretically, if I could go to like NYU or MIT or something that's like a massive campus, right? I wouldn't want to go because I don't like, I liked the experience I originally had in university. I'm not looking to be on a campus that, you know, has, you know, the population of a small country as their undergraduate, you know, number of students. That's not really my vibe. I would not have a fun time, I think. Not have a fun time. Oh, no, good question, Cody. Totally fair. Why do you need a safe word instead of saying stop with normal words? Perfect. So you can do that. I'm not saying you can't. You can ask for what we call in the community plain English, or I guess whatever, plain, your native language, plain English communication, where you do agree that no means no, stop means stop, keep going means keep going, and that's what you stick with. However, for a lot of people, especially if they may be wearing a gag or have their mouth obscured, or they maybe want to fight back and play around with being able to say no, the word no or stop can also be used in like a fun, teasing way in a BDSM scene where you're saying no and you're like laughing and rolling around and saying no, 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 stop, 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 stop. In the same way that maybe if you're having like, I don't know, what's a vanilla example of this? Like a tickle fight with a sibling, you might actually be enjoying it, but you might be saying, no, stop, that tickle, stop, but you are still enjoying yourself. In BDSM, we need to have clear communication that delineates between when things are enjoyable and when things are not. And because of the ambiguity that can exist around things like no and stop, it's better to have a word that's not going to pop up for other reasons during the scene to say, hey, this needs to be over. I know on like every single movie that talks about BDSM and all these different like books and erotica and everything, they always come up with a really random word, right? Like it's always like starfruit, pineapple, hot dogs. It's always a food word as well. I don't know anyone that uses a safe word on a regular basis that actually has a random word as a safe word. Red's really common, or just safe word by itself is really common. And whatever word you use, or you can also have a safe word that's like a signal. So like squeezing 3 times, or clapping your hands, or humming a certain song, depending on what's going to be accessible for you during the scene and what you're able to remember to do. But that's why you need to be able to separate stuff out. Of course, though, if you feel more comfortable just having stop means stop, then you can say that, and that's also like a fairly regular thing that people do. Use a safe word is confusing wording, though. Does it mean they use a safe word or agree to have one? In the phrasing of the study, it meant what they were asking is like, did you have a safe word in place? So when I am saying using a safe word, I feel like I could see how you might interpret it as meaning like, did you actively say one during the activity? But I think for most people, they would understand that that means like having a safe word in place, in the same way that you have like, I don't know, a fire extinguisher in your kitchen or something, right? All right, we're back to the aftercare question. For those who are wondering where I'm at in the chat. Ooh, I was taught by a lovely lady in $6,000 red bottom boots that made me feel like shit consensually. You know what I love is there's literally cobblers that you can pay to make any of your shoes red bottoms. They won't be proper Louis Vuittons, but like Louis Vuittons are uncomfortable and usually overrated except for a couple of designs. So I think it's great that you can engage in fancy, expensive, boot related play to your heart's desire. Exactly, kumquat with the C. How do you pronounce the C, I wonder? Oh, Sex Comma Explained, not just Explained, which is a different series. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, okay. There's a different, is it made by the same people, I wonder? Well, they're both made by Vox and Netflix, so kind of? Oh. Fantasies, attraction. I mean, there's like fertility and childbirth, which I guess is a fetish, but... And birth control. So like sexual fantasies and attraction, I guess, would be relevant. I wonder if they are going to get more episodes. I imagine not. They kind of went through the whole cycle of sex to baby, so maybe they don't have anything else to explore. I don't know. Oh, we have a super chat from Ticket Black. Good evening, Evie. Hello, chat. Evie, have you ever heard of the book Bondassage? If so, would you be willing to do a review on it? That name is so familiar. Let me Google this. Have I seen this? Whatever it is, it's got a trademark. The Art of Bondassage. They got a Damask magazine article about it. What is Bond? I don't even see a CEO Bondassage. This seems really familiar. Oh, you can get certified in it. You can apparently get certified in this. Okay, what is the description for this? This is a very... An attempt was made at a professional website, but I can tell this is like a stock Wix website. What is... online courses. I'm not seeing a book. I'm seeing that there's online courses and certification for this. Our 2-day Bondassage training is designed for sensually adventurous individuals and couples, body workers, tantrikas. Didn't know that was how you referred to people that do tantra, but now I know. Sexological body workers, pleasure artists, healers, sacred intimates, pro-doms, educators, and professionals of all kinds. You'll gain the skills and tools you need to create the outrageously unique Bondassage experience for those you touch. We provide comprehensive training tailored to your unique skill sets and talents. What is, there's apparently a manual, but I don't see a way to buy the manual. This is interesting. I'm kind of worried it might be a scam. Oh, here we go. Just as the name suggests, Bondassage is a modern fusion of both bondage and massage practices in all their varied forms. The practice blends kink and different forms of bodywork to provide an all-encompassing, I always have trouble with this one, encompassing, multi-sensory, and oh so tantalizing experience to whomever wishes to experience it. Bondassage offers not only solo sessions with its practitioners worldwide, but also workshops for couples, as well as training courses for those who wish to embark on the journey to become a practitioner themselves. Okay, well, there's a whole interview with the creator of it, so I'll have to look at that later. But the name is familiar, but I don't know anyone that actually has experience, like, doing it, you know? I work in used books and found A Female Orgasm Doesn't Exist book from the 40s. It was like 200 pages. What could they possibly be exploring in those 200 pages? That feels like it should be like a 10-page like pamphlet. Fascinating. I love that. I wonder, have you found any other like BDSM related books in your used books career? I'm sure they had all kinds of wacky shit that was like designs and stuff that were coming out, you know? What are good places to buy BDSM toys that have shipping for Puerto Rico? I don't know because I don't live in Puerto Rico, but I do have a FAQ down below that you can check where I do have an FAQ and like links to like literally hundreds of different BDSM shops. Especially with COVID and everything else, I have no idea where is shipping anywhere else in the world. So you're going to have to find that out for yourself, possibly email some people. But unfortunately, unless anyone here is from Puerto Rico and knows places that are maybe local or do ship to there, otherwise I have no idea, unfortunately. So going back to the aftercare question for a second, we added on. All people in a scene need aftercare. Depends on what happens in the scene. My daddy likes a cigar, and for me to cuddle and kneel at his feet or be a footrest as his aftercare. Yeah, exactly. Like, some people like a nice mixed drink. Some people like a cigar. Some people like to cuddle. Some people like to take a bath together. Some people like to just kneel and meditate or whatever else. Like, there's so many options for potential aftercare, especially that can be recentering for both of you. I have a guide dog. I also work where I got the dog. People remember dogs. What's your opinion on giving the dog another name like I do with myself? Like different names for different places, or like just a different name in general? I feel like that's kind of up to you as the owner if you want to change the name of the dog, and I feel like they shouldn't be offended by that. I think if you want to rename the dog, you should just do that. And earlier is better, I think, generally, if you want to rename as well. I've recently been trying to engage with my local kink community, COVID permitting, and I've noticed that there is a lot of stigma about switches in my local scene on FetLife. Is this a common thing? I would say that it is a very, like, it is kind of common, but how common it is depends on where you live. And I think a lot of people, like, talk a big game on FetLife and don't necessarily express those opinions in real life, thank God, because that would annoy me. I don't think, actually, let me think about it. I've certainly heard people, like, around here that have, like, maybe one or two people that have kind of, like, I don't know. I feel like switches eventually pick one or the other. Like, I've heard that not even a half dozen times from people around here. And there's lots of switches where I live. Like, switching is very, very, very popular. So if you came out and said, switches suck, like, you're not going to be welcome to the local munch again anytime soon. But I think in other places, from what I've heard, plus your own story as well, there are a lot of places that are very anti-switch for some reason. But it totally depends on where you live. And just know that they are wrong. Switches are a thing. They've been here for a long ass time. They're going to keep being here. And the more I hear about it, the more it reminds me of, like, the bisexual argument, which shouldn't even be an argument, by the way, in the LGBT plus community, which is like, for some reason, all these decades later, there's still people that think that bisexuals don't exist. And they're just lesbians that haven't admitted it to themselves yet, or confused gay men, or straight people that want to act special. And it's like, no, sometimes people really do just like multiple genders, and that's fine. Like, there's lots of people. In fact, actually, the founder, or co-founder, rather, of the Society of Janus is a bi woman. Lots of bi activists in the LGBT community, lots of bi people in the kink scene, lots of bisexual switches, lots of bi people that are only submissive or only dom, right? Very, very, very common. I think it's silly that people try to debate that other people just... It's like, I can't imagine the mindset of it, because what you have to do in order to do that, especially, it's not like the term alpha submissive, where it's like 5 people are like, this is what I am. Where it's like, this is an entire category of ways that people experience BDSM. And you're just like, I think all those people are lying. And me, random dom that's only ever done doming for 20 years, I authoritatively know what other people experience internally about BDSM, because I've personally never been motivated towards being submissive, and therefore no one could ever want to be both. And it's just like, oh my God, that is such bad logic, because just because you experience something doesn't mean other people experience it the same way or don't experience something different. Like, it's so silly. It's just, switches are real. They exist. Stop being hateful. And, frankly, be grateful, because switches are generally the ones that are carrying a lot of the weight in the community. Like, a lot of the community organizers are switches. A lot of the people that run classes are switches. Like, switches do a lot. So, unless, like, I don't know, just shut up. That's my answer. Shut up. Evie, last week I asked for recommendations with my boyfriend, whom was always vanilla, but one day we started a dominant me and submissive him play that we really enjoyed. I was really submissive. I made him investigate more with all your recommendations, and thanks everyone, but I think that is still a lack of videos, articles, etc. about experience subs starting at domination. Oh, yeah. I think that's very true. That's certainly a unique experience. I think, I mentioned this, I think, last week as well, but just to reiterate for today. I know a lot of people that are like Mistress Couple, Dossie Easton, Janet Hardy, a lot of people that have written books about BDSM, people that are educators in BDSM, a lot of them are women that start out being submissive that then become dominant later on in their like kink career, basically. So I think it is a common experience, but it's not necessarily one that a lot of people write about and how that's different. Oh God, we read something somewhere. This could be dangerous. I read somewhere that a dom should try to push a sub to safe word to make sure they will. That strikes me as not good. What do you think? Oh, I have a story for you guys. All right, you guys ready for this story time? I was ready for the story time. So, I want to say this was like, it was one of the first times I'd been to a BDSM dungeon. It was maybe like the third or fourth time I'd been to one. So this is a great impression, first of all. Great impression for expectations for a DS relationship I didn't have yet. There was a group of, I believe, dominant men that were hanging out during the social part of a dungeon party. And they were all talking amongst each other. And one of the doms, one of them that I actually knew, who was partnered to somebody that was submissive to them, that I actually knew from one of my math classes, weirdly enough. That was awkward. But he was talking about how they had done a really, really intense scene, and he had like pulled out all the stops. I specifically remember something either about a cold shower or a cold bath being involved. And like, he's like, yeah, and I finally got her to red. And then like everyone was like, woohoo. And like literally like, this is like such a like r/that happened moment. But like literally they were so excited about it. They were like, oh yeah, man, you finally did it. Like, they were like happy that she's safe worded. And I was like, we have very different understandings of what safe words are meant for. So they had this conception that safe words were like a goal to reach, like, because it was very much framed like, oh man, she's so hard of a masochist that like I can't get her to safe word no matter what I do, and I finally broke her. Like that was the mentality of the approach, and that was what like, I'm like, I don't recommend that. Like, if what you're doing is, I want to break my partner, I want to make sure they really know what suffering is, I'm going to get them to safe word. It's like, I don't think that's healthy. I mean, I didn't know this part of the conversation. I don't know if they talked about this. If it was a consensual thing where they were like, hey, I'm obviously a really heavy bottom, and we haven't gotten close to me wanting to safe word yet. I want to know where my boundaries are. I would like to negotiate for a scene where we try to find where my red is. Like, you can negotiate to do a scene like that. But if he was, like, maniacally plotting without telling his partner that they were doing a scene that was designed to get her to say red because he wanted to get dom points with his dom friends, like, that's fucked up to me. However, I think the technique that I do hear of is not, like, using a scene as a way to test whether or not somebody can use a safe word. There's two separate things. So one is you tell them to say a safe word on purpose even when the play is really light, right? So like you say, for example, I'm going to cane you 10 times. After the 10th cane, I want to hear you say safe word. Not because the scene needs to stop, but just because I want to know you can be in a scene and be in the environment and actually say the word that you need to say. And I think planning for that is like having a fire drill, basically. Like, I think that's fine. And then there's, I think, the more common thing I hear, which is you test to see if someone will say no to you during a negotiation to know they can say no. It's not really about getting them to say a safe word in particular. It's about, like, can they say no to me, right? So maybe you're negotiating, and then as, like, a joke on page 4 of your pre-scene negotiation checklist, you say, oh, would it be okay if I shaved your whole head? Would it be okay if I shaved your eyebrows? Right? And you expect them to say no to that. And if they say, no, that's fine, I have no limits, that's a red flag. And I guess maybe you could find someone that would be okay with that because they don't care about the hair at all and it sounds like a fun thing to do and they were waiting for an excuse to do it. I don't know. But generally speaking, I've heard of people either not like tricking in a malicious way, but just like either saying something obviously outlandish or just observing in general if anything you propose ever gets said no to. Because you're not trying to find like a perfect match that agrees with you on absolutely everything all the time. You're trying to find someone that you're mostly compatible with, but that is willing to show you what their boundaries are and knows what those boundaries are. And someone who only ever says yes, maybe is just like completely out of touch with where their boundaries are. So, yeah, I think the sort of like, I'm going to get her to say red, like trying to push people to their limits kind of a thing is like not great. And especially the beginning of a relationship. Like if the first scene you're like, I'm going to do something that's going to make her say her safe word. Like you're just violating consent at that point. It doesn't matter that you have a logical reason behind it. Like, great, you found out that they could say a safe word by violating their boundaries. That makes you a dick. You win the dick award for today, and not in the way that you want to. I have no idea why this got held for some reason by YouTube chatbots, but I also think that talking about experienced subs trying out being a dominant is certainly worth a BDSM 101 alongside my other infinite list of BDSM 101 videos. So it'll happen at some point or another. Evie, can you let people know how having a safe word can actually make the fun or punishment last longer? How? That's an operative word, isn't it? I think that it can give you a sense of security in the scene. Like, it's like maybe you feel a little bit more dangerous because you know you've got a parachute and a fire extinguisher and a pair of walkie-talkies and a light alert button, right? Like you're like, I got all the safety equipment I need, I'm prepared. And so having that base of security helps you feel more adventurous and can allow you to lean more into things because you know you always have that thing that you can say that will stop everything from happening if and when it goes too far. I think that would be primarily the reason why it would make something last longer is if you're anxious about going too far and you're not really sure how close you can get, maybe you'd be more willing to say no like too early, air quotes around too early, because whatever is too early is what you decide it to be. There's not like some sort of objective measure of too early or not early enough or whatever. Like it's up to you. But I think that if it's just about like having it last longer than having that sort of sense of like, oh, I have this thing that can make this stop whenever I want to if it gets too difficult. Like that is something I think that makes it easier to play in that edge area versus like not being sure if they'd really stop or not and having to rely on no by itself being enough when maybe they might confuse you saying no or stop or please don't as you like playing along and actually being into it. Oh, good question. Is it normal for a dom to be nervous before a scene if they don't have much experience? I think that is totally normal. I think it's like nervousness for a lot of things is very normal, actually. I think if you are someone that is new to BDSM as a dom and you're nervous, that makes sense because maybe you don't want to accidentally hurt someone. Maybe you're scared of not coming across as dominant enough. I think that makes total sense. I think if you're someone who is a submissive and it's your first time playing, you might be nervous because you're not sure if you can take the pain. You're not sure if you're going to be attractive enough. You're not sure if you're going to like make the right noises or meet whatever expectations your partner has. And that can certainly lead people to be nervous. Even when you're experienced, when you're playing with a new person, you can still get nervous because it's a new person and you're like, oh my gosh, like, what if they don't like me? What if I don't have good energy with them? What if I make a weird noise they find unattractive? I don't know. Like, it's perfectly reasonable and normal to be nervous. And I think once you try it out, it should hopefully help you feel less nervous. But you got to try it. That's the thing. Don't do anything too crazy. Don't do anything too extreme, right? We're not here to one-up each other with the intensity of our BDSM. But doing a little scene, doing something kind of low-key, just try it out and hopefully it will seem less scary. Because you can also, especially if you've been waiting a really long time to do BDSM, I think you can kind of build up the idea of kink in your head to be like, oh my God, this is so intense and it's going to be the most magical, amazing experience of my whole life. My brain's going to explode and everything I've ever wanted is finally going to happen. And then if you actually do it, then it's like, oh, that wasn't a big deal. But then if you build it up in your head way too much, then you're invariably going to be disappointed, right? So don't build up too much in your head. Relax. And also, I think one thing that you can do to mitigate your nervousness is communicate. Communicate with your partner, right? The person you're going to be doing the BDSM with. If you've got a plan to do BDSM, negotiate, talk often, check in, make sure you're really on the same page, make sure you know exactly what you're planning on doing. And having more of a plan, I think, generally helps people be less nervous because you're like, okay, I know that they have this many years of experience and we're going to do spanking together and it's going to have this energy to it and it's going to last for this long and we're going to do XYZ thing. It's going to be at this place, this time. Like, when you know what to expect, the less sort of extreme guesses your brain can make for you to be like, this extreme terrible thing might happen. Like, if you don't know the details, you might be thinking, oh my God, I could be spanking her for 2 hours and she might not feel anything. Or what if I accidentally hurt her? Like, it's really easy to get like spun out into like theoretical danger zone, basically. And if you can do things to reduce that by getting more information, that is generally beneficial. All right, let's see. Next question. A question stemmed off of someone else's. Any advice for someone who doesn't trust their own instinct? I have a lot of self-doubt. I think that's very normal. I think having self-doubt, especially, I don't want to get into your history necessarily. It's a very common, like if you have a history of trauma, very common you would doubt your own ability to accurately interpret the world around you or be able to guess what people think or feel about things. And if it's a question of interacting with someone, then you have to be in a position where you can have lots of open and honest conversation with people about what are we doing here? What are our intentions? Are we using a safe word? What are the boundaries? What are the limits? And hopefully hearing that from someone else directly and being reassured of what's going on will help you. It's all because at that point it's not even really about trusting your own instinct. It's about trusting other people, which is a different question and potentially easier than trusting yourself, which is totally a normal thing that can happen. And when people refer to a gut instinct, and when I refer to a gut instinct, it can give you important information, but it can also be miscalibrated. So our gut instinct is generally based off of things that have happened in the past or things that we've observed or certain knowledge or biases that we have that tell us if something could potentially be dangerous or be fun or be whatever, right? It's kind of like our own intuition-based, slightly minorly educated world model of like, how likely is this thing? How does this make me feel? And sometimes those things are valid and correct. Sometimes our gut instincts are like, this person seems like a serial killer, and then 2 months later they're on the news and you're like, thank God I didn't go on a date with that guy, right? And other times it's way too sensitive and it completely misreads things and it thinks things are really dangerous when they're actually not. And if you know you're dealing with that, I think that's more of a thing that you would have to work out with like a mental health professional to kind of deconstruct where your brain/body is going wrong in the direction of being too hypersensitive to like potential things and being hypervigilant. Because like if you're in the area of being hypervigilant, again, that's like kind of typically more of a trauma thing, and that's something you'd have to work with professional. But if you can work with someone and you can develop more of a trusting relationship with your own instinct and work to recalibrate it, that would be the best ideal situation. But also being able to trust other people and being able to kind of like guess and check what your assumptions are. So if your instinct is saying, this is like the important part of introspection, if your gut instinct is saying, I don't feel comfortable about doing a spanking right now, you can reflect internally and go, well, I'm nervous about doing a spanking right now because I'm worried that my partner wants it to lead to sex and I don't want to have sex right now. You can check in with your partner and be like, hey, I think I want to do a spanking, but I'm nervous about doing it because I'm worried that you might want to turn it into sex later. Is that the case or not? And then you go, oh, no, it's totally non-sexual. I don't want to have sex right now. And then you go, oh, okay, we're not going to have sex. Great. Boundary established. Perfect. And then you can kind of give yourself new information to act on. And I want to say there's a YouTube channel named Dr. K that I really, really like. I've recommended him to so many people. And he has one time where he talks about BDSM. Dr. K, let's see, what do I want to search? I want to give you a video to watch. Maybe just instinct? I'll try that. I'm not seeing anything pop up, but it's Healthy Gamer GG is the name of the channel by Dr. K. If you search Healthy Gamer GG or Dr. K, his channel will pop up. If you look on that, if you go through enough of the videos, I'm sure that he has something about gut instinct or coping with self-doubt and reassurance. I'm sure there's something in there. And he is a Harvard-educated, Harvard-trained PhD psychiatrist, so he has information about how the brain works more than I do. Honestly, I still like the idea of doing classes together as a date. Oh, totally. Like, if I ever like found someone on a dating app that was like, hey, I was looking on the events calendar and I saw there's a class about electroplay coming up. Do you want to go with me? I'd be like, yeah. Like, I literally, one of my first BDSM partners I ever had, the reason we met is because we both wanted to take a bondage class. Another one of us had partners, so we went together. And we like met up, I think, for crepes beforehand. It was really, really sweet. And that was, I think, a really good way of like getting to know someone in a kink setting, but not really doing a full-on scene with them. So based on my own experience, I would say going to a class or an educational thing as like a first BDSM date, not bad. I'm new here. I'm an alpha sub. Ooh, Andrew, define for me what alpha sub means to you. I'm curious because I've heard a lot of different answers, and I'm trying to survey what people think alpha sub means to them, or what you know it means to you. But like, you know, I'm not trying to say you don't know about yourself. That would be silly. Where I live, there are no classes except shibari, but the interest in learn about safety and skills in the area of the internet is a must for me looking for DOMs. Oh, totally. Like, I think bondage in person, like if you're going to take classes in person, I feel like bondage is one of the ones to do. But there's so many resources now online for things like flogging, caning. There's even books as well. I think it's Spanking for Lovers that talks about spanking and also caning a bit. There's definitely ways to learn techniques in an educational capacity rather than just like winging it, you know? They don't necessarily mean you have to be in person. Especially if you don't have something that's like locally available. I'm new to the BDSM lifestyle. Where's a good place to learn about this? Here's good. I have lots of other videos on where to find educational resources. You can also go to FetLife, which is a website. I'm talking about that in other videos as well. FetLife. FetLife. And you can find educational classes on there. Tons of books, tons of things. FAQ down below as well. Don't forget that. That will have answers and resources and links to many, many different things you might want to try out as a place to start. Ooh, you got to try pet play harnesses for the first time. That's fun. I really like the feeling of harnesses. They are... I like bondage things, so that's also just me. I just am into bondage. So, you know, bonus for me there. Oh, I have a friend who's into DDLG. I'm not. Any tips? Multiple ways I could interpret that question. Do they want to do DDLG things with you, or do you just want to be comfortable being around them? Because it's one thing to do DDLG with someone and another to just be comfortable with it. Because for me, if what you're looking for is just like, I want to understand this, I have lots of videos talking about age play, DDLG, CGL, littles, dark age play. I have so many videos on like a bunch of different stuff on age players and littles that explain why people are into it, why it's appealing, dispelling common myths and misconceptions about it. And I would encourage you to look at those if you have not already. If the thing is just, I want to understand this and I don't get it and it seems weird to me, and help me because they're my friend. And as long as you understand that they're not trying to do anything illegal and that just, you know, it doesn't make them mentally ill, like that's, you know, just be nice, basically. If they want to do age play stuff with you or CGL stuff with you, that's a different question though. That's so wonderful. Just moved up in a collar today. My daddy Dom and I both got teary-eyed, so thankful for this lifestyle. Oh, that's so wonderful, Coconut Kitty. That's great. Round of applause for Coconut Kitty. And her daddy Dom. Or their daddy Dom. I'm sorry, I don't know what your pronouns are. That's fantastic. We love it. We love healthy, positive, growing BDSM relationships. They do have, so in Germany, they do have their version of the Folsom Street Fair. They have, I think it's a different time of year. I want to say it's the spring, but they have a version of it there. And there is like a leather community in Germany as well. This like, I think Switzerland has one as well. Canada, obviously. I think less so the UK, but it's out there. Oh, absolutely. Like, Kara says, I've been researching spanking for years because it's a major kink, and a lot of people that are into spanking don't consider themselves in this BDSM world. Oh, yeah. Like, even people that do, like, spanking as, like, a regular part of a lifestyle, like, they're Spankos. They're not BDSM. They don't consider themselves to be BDSM. Personally, I do think that it's under the umbrella in sort of the sense of, like, sadomasochism, but the communities and the cultures are different. So, like, there's Spanko culture and then there's BDSM culture, and they're different. And for some people, they overlap. Like, I know Spankos that also, like, are into BDSM stuff. But it's, like, the same thing as, like, latex as well. Like, a lot of people have latex fetishes, or just fetishes in general. Have those fetishes, but don't necessarily think they're in BDSM, right? So I think that's really fascinating. Oh, the kitten collection came back from vacation. I was just looking at them last night and went, oh, they're not open. They came back from vacation. Oh, did they get rid of the ribbon collars, like, entirely? How does that happen? I mean, they're really not as popular as they used to be, I guess. I'm gonna look this up. I want to see. Because I have wanted to order something from them since, like, before Christmas. Oh, they have a bunch of new stuff, though. Got a bunch of new stuff. They were on vacation, on a mission. There's, like, a bunch of velvet stuff. Oh, this looks cool. If you guys want to know what I'm looking at, it's literally just Etsy, the kitten collection. I wonder if they have anything that's new that's like biothane. Because that's what I want to get. I like ribbon collars, alright. And I like they have like a velvet like plush collars, which also look cool / cute, but like I don't like the like black velvet. I feel like makes everything else look washed out, and so I don't generally get it. I don't know. Such a poser. What am I even doing? I should just not even wear black anymore if I'm not gonna wear black velvet, I guess. Where is this study? I don't have a link to the study, but I have like I've been talking about like 6 different studies, and I am doing a video where I am citing all of them, so you will have access to all of them soon. I also don't know which of the studies I was referencing at the time, but most of the studies I was looking at were either in Belgium, Australia, or the USA. Majority in the USA. Would you consider a dedicated episode based upon your experience and recommendations for people to find compatible partners in both the metro area as well as smaller communities? I mean, I have multiple videos now. I think the most recent one was like 8 months ago, where I talked about how to find partners and how to meet people. And I don't really feel like I have anything else to add to that. I mean, I do talk about my experiences occasionally, but what it boils down to is either I met them on a dating app or I met them at a BDSM party. Like, those are the 2 answers. Like, it's not really that complicated or interesting, unfortunately. But I have done stuff like that in the past for videos. Oh yeah, absolutely. I totally want to study BDSM at a smaller college, just Brigham Young University, famously the Mormon University. Maybe I'll go there and I'll find a husband. You never know. Anything's possible. Maybe I'll find a wife. I don't know. They're sheltered. Sometimes. I wonder. I'd have to follow a lot of purity rules, though, to go there. I don't think I'd be undercover for that long. They probably wouldn't even let me in. It's 104 degrees at over, like, it's past midnight. That is, listen, it's like, what temperature is it? It's 42 degrees here right now. If we could average those temperatures, I feel like that would be ideal. You'd get it a nice, like, 80-something degrees. That would be perfect. Oh, I lost part of the chat. Okay, give me a second. I gotta scroll to where I was before, because I'm gonna miss things. Why are so many messages being blocked? Oh my god. Okay, I'm at the point where we're joking about kumquat being spelled with a C. I have a very stand-up and mature audience. Oh, goodness. Saskatchewan is a safe word? That's a good one. I feel like with something that's too many syllables, I would worry about, like, oh, what if I was out of breath and I couldn't say it? Like, that's what I'd worry about. But I think if it works for you, it works for you, you know? What's your opinion on polygamous relationships? Well, if we mean polygamy in the sense of a religious plural marriage in which one man dominates the household and then takes on as many wives as he can afford to, regardless of whether or not the other women are really comfortable with it, I'm against that. I'm against any kind of being forced into a relationship style because of a religion. However, if the thing you meant was polyamorous, which is the actual word, polygamous generally has a very, very strong religious connotation, and nobody that practices what I would call ethical non-monogamy refers to it as polygamy. It is polyamory. That's the phrase. But I'm polyamorous. I think it's fine. I don't think anyone has to be polyamorous. I don't think people that are polyamorous are any more special or awake or whatever the fuck compared to people that are monogamous. I just think it's a different style, a different way of having relationships. And as long as it is consensual and everyone involved is knowing what's going on, that's what matters. Otherwise, it's not that complicated. So Chandler asked, is there a massive difference between the leather BDSM community and the general BDSM community? It's just another section, like age players. It seems like such a cornerstone of the entire community. I would consider leather to be like a common ancestor that still exists and is still like around. I don't know if that's probably too extreme of an analogy. It is its own separate culture within BDSM in the way that I think age players have their own like kind of culture in a way. But it's not separate. It's not like it's not BDSM. It is very much still BDSM. Non-leather people and leather people mix together and play together and go to conventions together and have classes together and all that stuff. But the styles are different. Like it's like a style difference and like a culture difference. But it's like a subculture within a subculture, basically. If I had to pick something, they're definitely different in terms of like the styles of relationships that are most common, certain types of gatherings that are most common, right? Like for example, like cigar socials are really popular with leather culture folks, but like smoking is so uncommon, especially in the US in general, that unless you're in the leather scene, you're really like general BDSM people don't generally have cigar parties, you know? So there are some differences, but they are very, very closely related, even if they do, have different opinions on certain things or have certain styles and how they approach certain things. Like, I'd almost say that, like, the general BDSM community, you get a lot of those people that are just, like, random guy in a cardigan or wearing cargo shorts that just is like, I went to a BDSM party because I thought there was going to be loose women here that would have sex with me. You get those people. But that doesn't, like, happen in the leather community because it's kind of, like, closed off, and you have to know about it to, like, find a gathering to meet people that are in that culture, and like you have to be one of the people. Like it's like the general BDSM community is open to a lot of people, like everyone from like the guy that's just like a voyeur that wants to just masturbate while watching people to like the people that are in MS relationships and everywhere in between. Whereas leather, I think, is so specific in its approach and in its focus, and there is variety, right? Like there are brats that are in leather, there's age players in leather, like there's not just like there's one way to do it, but like it's the approach is specific enough to where it's like you kind of know if you're in it or not. I don't know if that makes sense. I feel like that's not helpful unless you've actually like been around leather people and you know what I'm talking about, but like there is an obvious difference, and they're also like they tend to be very working class. They tend to be like you don't get Christian Greys in the leather community. You get a lot of people that are like long haul truckers and are like union organizers and shit. Like you don't get people that are, you know, running their own corporations or tech workers or things like that where they're making six figures. That's generally not attracted. People like that aren't generally attracted to leather culture stuff. Unless they're really wealthy and they like motorcycles, I guess. All right, we have 15 minutes left, everyone. So if you haven't asked your question yet, now is the time. Super chats, that's the great way to make sure I answer your questions, because otherwise I definitely cannot promise I will get to them. Loose women, please imagine looking for women like spirit change an account. I'm sorry I brought that imagery upon everyone, but that's literally, like, they're not super common, but I would say there's at least one guy at every party I've been to in the last couple of years, like since, you know, things have reopened post, well, interim COVID, I guess. I'm not actually sure if things are going to be still happening at this point. You get one of those guys where it's like he's clearly confused about the fact that women here don't want to have sex with him. And it's like, do you see anyone here having sex? Do you see anyone here having sex? Like, at all? Did you misread the label? Possibly. The BDSM diagram is four-dimensional. It is very complex. We are complex people. And people in general are complex, for that matter. I get this question a lot. I haven't read Sunstone, but everyone else talks about it so fucking much that at this point, I'm never going to finish reading it. I read like the very first part of it when it was originally still being like self-published on DeviantArt before it actually got like compiled into books. But I haven't finished it ever, and I probably won't, to be honest, because I can't be arsed with comic books. I'm terribly sorry. And Kelly asked, I do want to play around a little, but I'm very fair-skinned and bruised like a ripe pear. Any suggestions to avoid bruising? I don't want people thinking my husband's hurting me in a bad way. I get whacked by like my dog's tail and get a bruise. Oh, totally understandable. I think one is don't play in parts of the body that would be visible to the public if you're worried about that. So like butt, back, areas that I guess unless you're wearing a bikini, people wouldn't really notice. I'm also very fair-skinned. One thing to consider is that your skin becomes less reactive over time the more that you do BDSM, so you generally bruise the most at the beginning, and then that wanes away over time. You could avoid this a couple of ways. One would be to warm up very slowly before you get into the heavier play. The more warmed up you are, it's not impossible to bruise, but it's less likely. If you start going like hardcore really fast, great way to get a really intense bruise. But if you're avoiding that, then you want to warm up very carefully. Also, playing over clothing. So if you're playing over like, not like lingerie, that's probably too thin, but like, I don't know, some like pajamas or like jeans or something, less likely to bruise because the majority of that like initial impact that would be causing the bruising is like the energy is like going into the clothing first before it goes into your skin, and so that can also lower the sensation and also then just like make it less likely that you would bruise. I'm trying to think if there's any kind of other, there's like bruising is one of those things where like every human body is so individual and we all have different things that make us bruise more easily or not, in terms of like maybe you never bruise from spanking, but you bruise from caning. Like the type of impact play can vary it, the location on your body. It can also depend on where you're at in your cycle. It can depend on how hot or cold you are. It can depend on what medication you're on. It can depend on your general relative hormone levels. So like people that are more estrogen or estrogen dominant tend to bruise more easily than people that are more testosterone dominant. But it really, really depends. So if you're one of those people that knows that they bruise fairly easily, you really just gotta either hone in on where in the body you're doing it. Take a long time for that warm up. Don't be afraid of going slowly. It's not gonna ruin anything. I promise. You don't have to rush to the finale. And playing over clothing, things. Ice packs and things used to be more recommended for like avoiding bruising, and you might find that helpful. Again, it totally depends on you individually. You may find that applying ice packs and things after a scene may help with reduction in bruising. I would say if you want to avoid making the bruising worse, I would avoid things like, let's say for example, like hot showers, a hot bath. Avoid things like aspirin, any kind of blood thinner. That's going to make the bruising more intense, because when you're increasing the circulation and you're dilating those vessels, that's going to increase the amount of bruising that happens. Also, when you're playing, if your partner is noticing, or I guess your partner is your husband, so I'll say your husband. If your husband is noticing like bruising or marking starting to happen during the scene, you've already gone too far. Because the bruising develops over time after the scene is done. So for example, I was playing with someone and they told me the next day after we were playing that they had small bruises. But when we were doing the scene together, they only had very light red marks. So you have to stop before you even have the visual indicators of bruising. Because if you have the visual indicators of bruising, the next day you're going to wake up with like twice or 3 times that. Not for everyone, but for a lot of people. So, play slowly, end things before you see those noticeable signs of bruises, and but if the reason why you want to avoid it is primarily because you don't want people to think your husband is hurting you in a bad way, you can also just play in parts of the body that like the public isn't generally going to see. And there's lots of things you can do that don't involve impact play. They don't involve leaving marks on your body, right? Lots of sensation play, wax play. You can play around like clamps, clips, things like clothespins, right? Things that don't generally leave bruising but can have, or at least invoke, a pain sensation. The 10 to 10.5 number I gave is for number of sexual partners over somebody's life as a sexually active adult. Poor puppy outside is barking so loudly, my goodness. Oh, goodness. Okay, I think we have time for like, I would say maybe 2 or 3 more questions. Okay, I have another question from Ticket Black. Have you ever heard of a voice kink? My boo seems to really get turned on when I read French to her in a deep tone of voice. Oh, totally. Absolutely. It doesn't really have a particular word in the kink scene. Like, we don't have like a word for it, but absolutely, people have fetishes for accents. People have fetishes for whispering. Other people just generally get turned on by being told what's happening to them or what's going to happen or threats or whispers. Like, that's all in the spectrum of things that people get turned on by. Maybe we should do a video about that, because I feel like that could be an interesting question to explore, because I think it's an underutilized aspect of a scene. Like, a lot of people really get into the moment, and unless they are checking in, like, hey, are you still good? Like, sometimes talking is not always a prevalent part of a scene, because like you get into it and you listen to the music and you forget how much of an effect, unless you're doing something that's really verbal, like training or humiliation, like especially during impact play, it's really easy to forget, like, the use of voice can be a big thing. Yes, Wasta Seyfried is a great resource. Highly recommend. Especially if you want a different perspective than, asexual female me. Did I miss a question? Aside from what she mentions in the video streams, there may be a lead in the FAQ. Lead for what? Oh, for like educational resources. I mean, I kind of went over that already in the stream, but I'll repeat it again just for the sake of everyone else, right? There's the Kink Academy. There's YouTube videos. I really recommend Morgan Thorne and Watts the Safe Word. WATTS, Watts the Safe Word, and Morgan Thorne, Thorne with an E at the end. I talk about them all the time if you're looking for YouTube content. FetLife in general, lots of discussion groups, lots of resources there for finding actual online classes you can go to. I personally go for what the Jugendspiegel Society is presenting. Lee Harrington has a lot of classes on there, and then also Wicked Grounds has a lot of online classes, and they are based out of San Francisco. So lots of options for there. There's the Kink Academy. There's all kinds of books. Down below I have links to different books and resources. So many books on Amazon. So many resources on there. And just general like blogs, other things. There's the Submissive Guide. There's Loving BDSM. There's all kinds of podcasts as well. So many different BDSM podcasts. So you have everything. You have audiobooks. You have podcasts. You have YouTube videos. You have regular books. You have online classes. Like you have so many options. So very many options for learning, to the point where I feel like there's so many options. It's like overwhelming how many there are. Oh, Orialism. That's what it's called. Thank you. All right, I'm going to find one more question here, and then I need to find something else to eat because I have only had toast to eat today, and that is definitely going to affect how productive I'm being. Let me see here. One more question. Sometimes it's really hard to like pick the last question because I try to find a good one. Where am I at in the chat? Everywhere and nowhere, apparently. That's where I'm currently at. Apparently the weather's going to be really bad. Here it's not. We had our bad weather between like Christmas and New Year's, but it's like way gone to the other side of the country at this point. How does one safe word if they're doing electroplay? It depends on the type of electroplay. So if you're doing electroplay and it's like a TENS unit where you're having like involuntary muscle contractions, you should still be able to do verbal safe words or like signal-based safe words as long as it's not on your arms. If it's on your arms are doing like this kind of business, then like that's not gonna work. If you're doing a violet wand and any kind of like surface level shock thing, I feel like you should be able to verbally safe word. Like you might be like, ow, fuck, stop it. But like you should still be able to just say safe word. So I don't think it's really that different for electroplay versus anything else. What are some basics to know before you go to your first munch? I have multiple videos you can look at on my channel where I talked about what to expect for your first munch, what my first BDSM dungeon was like. And I don't really have time to answer it deeper than that. I apologize, but it is in my FAQ, so you can check that out. What about coffee and cigarettes parties? I've only ever heard of whiskey and cigar parties, so I don't know about coffee and cigarettes. I feel like that could be a swinger thing, but I'm not confident. I haven't seen that around here before ever, so I don't know. Some people say polygamy is unnatural. If it were, it wouldn't happen. I mean, isn't that the whole point of the book Sex at Dawn, is to prove that actually polyamory and open relationships are the norm, and that actually monogamy is this modern enforced thing? So anyone that says any particular thing is like unnatural and therefore bad is like falling for like a biological fallacy, which is stupid and wrong. I feel comfortable saying that. So if you're saying, well, this, you can't do this because it's not natural, I'm like, okay, so we shouldn't wear clothing or have indoor heating? Like, okay. I guess we shouldn't use condoms either. Like, what do you want? It seems silly. No. There are certainly cultures in the world where open relationships, or what we would conceive of as polyamory, or some kind of non-monogamy, is the cultural norm. Other societies where monogamy is the cultural norm. Totally depends on the culture. Ooh, I thought we were going to get all the way through this stream without any spam. But right at the end there, we had to slip it in. Had to slip it in at the very end. I know, I wish Morgan Thorne was making videos again. I miss her videos. She does live streams every once in a while, but doesn't like regularly make BDSM like YouTube content, which makes me sad, but I get it. I understand it. It's YouTube is a grind. Is a grind in its own way. I know, we got so far without the spam today. What if you did smell, like, what if you did like a scent-based scene? Like you were just edging someone but with food. Like you just put different really tasty food like out for people to try, and you're like, here's this. Here's a hot, freshly baked pizza. Here's macaroni and cheese. Like whatever it is that's their favorite smell. Like, that's torture. All right, well, that is going to be everything for tonight, guys. I hope that you all enjoyed this. We do these live streams every Friday starting at 6 p.m. my time, which is on the West Coast. If you're on the East Coast, that is 9. In the UK, I want to say it's 11, or maybe it's later than that. And then, I don't know. It goes on from there. I have all the time conversions down below if you want to check it out. And thank you all so much again for watching and all of your wonderful questions. I had a really great time. And there will be a YouTube video coming out tomorrow. So if you want to make sure to check that out and you haven't already, please do subscribe. And I will talk to you all again very, very soon. Bye.